When is this guy gonna stop doing Half-Life videos? What is this guy's obsession with Half-Life? Do you guys think that Wizplay will make another video about Half-Life? I bet Wizplay is sleeping with Gabe Newell.
When is the Eternal Sonata video coming?
Wizplay is a Half-Life fanboy.
Wizplay spends every night tucking his copy of Half-Life
Can
in
this
while
guy
he reads
not
it.
Is this
shut up
really a
about
third
Half-Life?
video about Half-Life?
This guy needs to get over
Dude's
Half-Life.
nuts.
I took the liberty of preemptively making some of the comments that people are going to leave and responding to them now, because I'm super efficient like that. I'm probably the most efficient content creator on the platform. So much that you should probably give me an award for my incredible efficiency. When it comes to glazing on Half-Life, you know I'm coming in hard with that shit. I'm coming in long and hard. I'm coming in repeatedly long and hard. Okay, jokes aside, yes, it's yet another video about Half-Life. I'm sorry to all the people who hate this game or hate me talking about it, and I don't blame you if you want to skip this one or if you're sick of hearing about it. But in my defense, it has been over 7 months since I did my Opposing Force video. I promise other videos are in the works, but I want to make a small detour and talk about this because it's a much more obscure version of the game that many people evidently didn't even realize existed. Back in 1998, Half-Life took the world by storm. But I don't need to get into all that, you can just go watch my original video on it for all the details. Here, I'll conveniently leave a spot here so you can pause and go watch that. If you're still watching this, I'm going to assume that you've already watched it, or that you're just a really cool guy who just does whatever he wants and plays by his own rules.
I've got balls of steel.
Like I was saying, back in 1998, we were really experiencing a golden age of games. I mean, if you just look at a few of the amazing games that came out in 1998 that just changed our lives forever, you'd be drooling. Here, let's name a few. You've got Sonic Adventure, the game that changed Sonic forever. Banjo-Kazooie, perhaps one of the most revered platformers to ever grace the screen. StarCraft, one of my absolute favorite RTS games. Parasite Eve, a game that I already did a video on not too long ago. You should go check that out. Ocarina of Time, which is needless to say an absolute masterpiece. Resident Evil 2, the game that introduced the brooding gaming hottie Leon Kennedy to the world. And of course, Half-Life. I've said it before, but Half-Life was a crowning achievement in gaming, changing how we approach narrative, graphics, and gameplay for the first-person shooter genre. It was a fantastic experience that couldn't be found anywhere else. People who didn't have a PC, though, wanted access to this glorious game, but it wasn't that simple. In 1998, consoles were somewhat limited in their capabilities. A game like Half-Life just wasn't feasible on that hardware. Then came the Sega Dreamcast, the very first 6th generation console, hitting stores back in 1998.
But Wizplay, the title of the video says PlayStation 2. Why are you talking about the Dreamcast?
Patience, my child, we're getting to that. So, the Dreamcast showed a lot of promise, and Valve approached Gearbox in 1999 to produce a port of Half-Life for the console. The port was mostly finished, even bringing in a new campaign in Blue Shift for the console. But it was cancelled. Rather than scrap all they had, though, Gearbox approached Sony to see if they could develop the game for the PlayStation 2, which came out in 1999. They reworked what they had into the PlayStation 2 version of the game, and Blue Shift would release as an expansion for the PC version. And Half-Life would finally arrive to console players in 2001 for the PlayStation 2. Half-Life's PlayStation 2 port is a weird and mysterious animal. It's often forgot about when talking about the franchise. Everything about it is weird, right down to the fact that it's one of the few PS2 games that was actually released on a CD instead of a DVD. I actually played this port for the very first time back in around 2019, and I've played it at least 8 or 9 times at the time of making this video, so I think I'm somewhat qualified to talk about it by now. A lot of this video going forward is going to assume you're either familiar with Half-Life or my original video on it, and there is little point in repeating myself, so forewarning now, it might be a good idea to watch that video. Let's not delay things any further, it's time to once again talk about Half-Life. So the biggest differences with this version of the game come in the form of design and mechanics. Graphically, the game is using the dreaded HD models that people loathe from the PC version, including me. You can't mention design when it comes to Half-Life without talking about its high-quality model pack from Gearbox many years later. It replaced all the game's models with higher textured polygon models and remains fairly controversial. But it's something you have to talk about when it comes to Half-Life's design, so here's the segment of the video where we do that. They suck, don't use them. There is no way to turn them off either, so you just have to accept the fact that the weapons just look wrong. However, I will say this is far from a flaw that makes the game unplayable, as I find myself learning to ignore the weird out-of-place models. But if you're a Half-Life Puritan, these models will make your skin crawl. The really interesting thing here, though, is that the PS2 version of the game features some model changes for many things that even the PC port of the model pack didn't include. Some of them looking more detailed even. The most notable example is how the wall-mounted health kits now have animations associated to them and an extending arm with draining health fluid. Many areas of the game have been adjusted slightly either to save resources for the console or just bring out a bit more detail. There's even a few changes to fix things that Valve overlooked. I'm not going to list out every single little change because that would take way too long, and there are other content creators who have already done that, such as Lymphoid. I'll leave a link to his video in the description so you can check it out and see if you're really curious. Most of the changes make the game look a little fresher and graphically a tiny bit nicer in some areas. The changes make the experience feel fresh to PC veterans such as myself, but doesn't make the game feel too different from what you know and love. It's actually about what I expect from an adaptation of a game. It kind of comes off as a pseudo remaster in a way, in a good way actually. From my experience, the game performs fairly well with all these changes, and I didn't experience too many slowdowns. The frame rate seems to be fairly consistent, but there are some areas where the game can be finicky, such as using railcart seemed to be a bit awkward at times when they tended to lock up a little bit. Ugh, as if on a rail needed any help being an insufferable level. Naturally though, some mechanics need to be changed to make the game suitable for consoles, such as the crouch jump now automatic by holding down the jump button.
Wow, you're not gonna believe it, I figured it out. Thank you to my Twitter followers. This game has a bugged jumping mechanic. What you need to do is jump, and while you're jumping, crouch. And if you crouch while you're jumping, you can actually do jumps. See, I just did it. I jumped and crouched mid-jump and it worked. What the f*** did they do?
The most notable and prominent mechanic change, though, is the lock-on system that was added. Back in 2001, first-person shooters with dual joysticks was still a fairly new concept, so it was common that developers didn't know exactly how to smooth out movement enough to make it a viable option. Nowadays, most shooters on console have smooth movement with a tiny bit of auto-aim, but back then, a shooter like Half-Life, which focused on more precision shooting, wasn't really viable without drastically changing the game's design, which I'm sure Gearbox just didn't have the time to do, especially given that this was intended just as a straight port. To compensate this, Gearbox introduced a lock-on system where the player locked onto an enemy and adjusted their aim accordingly. This system, it mostly works. It's far from a bad solution to the problem, but definitely not the most elegant. For the majority of the game, the solution is serviceable, but for some of the later encounters where breaking the line of sight with you and the enemy is far more crucial to avoid death, this system can be tricky to adjust to. Overall, the controls feel somewhat clunky at times. There's no way to quickly navigate to the weapon that you need. This can be a big detriment in combat situations. On the PC version, you might quick cycle or press Q to pull up your last weapon, but on the PlayStation 2 version, you'll find yourself taking cover to select a different weapon. It's not the worst thing in the world, but it makes the combat feel far less fast-paced than the PC counterpart. It requires you to be more strategic and plan out your combat strategy more. That is perhaps the biggest drawback to this mechanic change, is that the speed of the game is definitely cut down. It's a shame, but not a deal breaker. It doesn't bring it down to the same pace as maybe Call of Duty in terms of how its shooting handles, but it's definitely not as elegant as the PC version. If you're playing on normal or easy if you're a noob, I guess, you likely won't have too many problems. But I can't imagine this game is even possible on hard difficulty without spam saving. Speaking of saving, I should mention the save system in the PC version was carried over, and that you can save anywhere and pick up exactly where you left off. But do be warned, there is no checkpointing like there is in the PC version, which auto-saves at any time you enter a load area. So it's up to you to save the game yourself. There is also a quick save option, so you don't have to go through the entire menu to save, but do be warned, this is only a temporary save. If you turn the game console off without saving properly, you are losing all your progress. I had that problem myself a few times. As far as I saw, there's nothing in the game that warns you of this either. A somewhat critical design flaw in my opinion, or maybe it's a bug. These design changes make the game a viable option on the PlayStation 2, but may not make it as enjoyable as an experience as its PC big brother. But still a decent experience as far as console ports go. The entire game is here, and that's actually cool, because the amount of compromises that would have been needed to make such a robust game running on hardware like this is actually quite incredible. I know there are some people who hate this port, but I actually think it's quite serviceable, and there were some big ambitions for it. It apparently was even going to actually have mod support down the road, but that feature didn't end up going anywhere. Can you believe that? Mod support on the PlayStation 2? It's actually insanely ambitious. They even want a fully robust online multiplayer mode that also got cut and chopped down to just a single split-screen head-to-head mode, which is pretty bare bones. It sort of reminds me of the multiplayer mode in Metroid Prime 2 actually, which was fairly mediocre, but I still had plenty of fun playing with it back in the day with my brother. It's a shame that we never got to see what could have been, because Half-Life on PlayStation 2 could have been a much larger deal than it ended up being. Still, what we did get is pretty damn impressive, and I'm actually surprised this runs at all. The resolution is obviously capped at 480p, but it is one of the few PlayStation 2 games that had widescreen support, so there's that. Due to the lower resolution, the heads-up display feels a little bit larger, and some of the game looks a bit grainy if you're used to playing on the PC, but it's not a huge deal if you ask me. Naturally, if you're using emulators though, you can boost the visuals out to be pretty damn close to its PC counterpart. The footage you're seeing was actually recorded from PlayStation 3 though. Honestly, the frame rate is pretty good for what it is, and it's definitely cool to see this on a PlayStation 2. I've played worse ports of games, that's for sure, so if this was your only way to experience this game back in the day, you were still going to have a good time. Even if you had the PC version, it's still worth just to experience it for all of its little quirks. And of course, there's the extras that are exclusive to it, but we'll get into that. Next, we have to talk about the story. Yeah, I know, I have a huge habit of butchering the story of games, and yes, my last video was a game with minimal story, so it's probably ironic that this video's story section will also be fairly short. But this time I have a good reason. I already covered the story of Half-Life quite extensively in my original video, and it's not like the story has changed any since making that video. So rather than retread ground that I've already covered, I'm going to use this section to talk about deeper aspects of the story. Naturally, the story is unchanged in the PlayStation 2 version of the game, and that's actually a good thing really. It's a timely story about a theoretical physicist that bludgeons aliens to death with a crowbar and saves humanity from said aliens, only to eventually be conquered by different aliens in the sequel. Half-Life's story is something that's stuck with me for a long time due to how deep it goes through all kinds of context clues, instruction manual text, and various other sources. Half-Life's lore at first glance is very surface level, but actually goes very deep if you examine it. Its story is so deep that I've already mentioned in my original video, there are several hours of content dissecting its story and background information. Enemies all have designs that make it clear where they stand with their hierarchy and what they're meant to do. From the beginning, it's very clear that Gordon Freeman is working for a very prestigious and top-secret facility. Context clues and environmental storytelling remain king. As you learn through observation, watching equipment malfunction and hearing concerns from your colleagues,
what the hell is going on with our equipment? It wasn't meant to do this in the first place.
Make it clear that safety was a low concern at Black Mesa and that results were the top priority. Most of us can imagine that the more classified something is, the more likely illegal operations that ignore safety protocols are happening, and Black Mesa exemplifies that. The portal technology being researched likely was intended for military use, which would explain why the government quickly sends specially trained Marines to neutralize the facility and eliminate survivors the moment things go wrong. So many times in Half-Life I stop and look at something and realize it tells a deeper story than at first glance. It's really a testament of an excellent game when every time I play it I find something new, even if it's just something really small. While this version of the game won't give you much to discover story-wise from the original game, that isn't to be said that there is nothing new to be found, as the inclusion of a new co-op campaign, Half-Life Decay, adds new perspective to the story that we'll talk about right now.
And I'll let Dr. Green into the test.
Dr. Keller!
Hello, Dr. Rosenberg. We're sort of in the middle of something right now, so...
I've been talking to Harold. He seems to be under the impression that you're planning on running the anti-mass spectrometer at greater than 90%. You realize there is a reason for the safety buffer.
I understand your concern, Doctor, but the administrator was quite clear.
The administrator is a bureaucrat, not a scientist.
There's actually quite a plethora of extra content that wasn't included in the PC version to talk about here. The most prominent being Half-Life Decay, a full-fledged expansion that features two-player co-op. Decay tells the story of Dr. Cross and Dr. Green, who played a pivotal role in some of the events that led to the original Resonance Cascade in the original game. We also get to see how two other characters, Dr. Rosenberg, who would feature more prominently in Blue Shift expansion, and the wheelchair-bound Dr. Keller play a role in the incident at Black Mesa. I won't spoil too much of the story, but Dr. Cross and Dr. Green have to work together with the assistance from Dr. Rosenberg and Dr. Keller to try to contain the situation at Black Mesa. The events of Decay happen concurrently with the events of the original Half-Life, so it's clear that Gordon wasn't the only one pelting things with crowbars at Black Mesa. It's actually kind of interesting to play as these new two female characters. I think this would actually be the only time in the franchise where you'd play as a female character outside of the more recently released Half-Life Alyx. The game mode can be played co-op with a friend in split screen, or you can swap back and forth between the two characters as single player. Because of the limitations of the console, though, the campaign is mission-based, unlike the original game. The maps must be smaller so that load screens wouldn't exist within them, as they'd be too tricky to load maps in and out while two players will simultaneously be navigating between those maps. It's a really unique idea and it plays decent enough, but the two players really need to work together as resources are shared, and it's easy for one player to just be a douche and take everything for themselves, leaving the other high and dry. Story-wise, it doesn't add too much to the backstory of Half-Life, but it's a refreshing, little bite-sized campaign that gives you a little bit more for your buck. It can be really challenging though, so be prepared for frustration, as because it's mission-based, that means death means going back to the start of the level. There are no checkpoints, and I can imagine that would make you scream at your screen at times. There is one other extra thing I want to talk about, and that is Alien Mode. It basically allows you to play the entire game leading up to the Zen level as a Vortigaunt. And it's actually super fun to play this game this way, and it kind of makes you think about the game a little bit differently. It even sports an alternate ending, so it's worth doing just to say that you did. I actually had a lot of fun playing this mode, and I would definitely recommend playing this just to do this. Overall, you're getting a decent package for what you have, and while the game could have featured the expansions that were available to PC players at the time, I'd say you're getting a good deal for what you got with this one. Again, I've played worse ports, that's for sure. If this video is your first time hearing about this version of the game, I hope it may have convinced you to give it a shot. While the controls might be a little bit difficult to get used to at first, Half-Life on the PlayStation 2 is a good experience even when stacked up against its PC big brother. It's fun to try it, if not solely just for a fresh take on the game that you fell in love with back in 1998. I know I've played this version a bunch of times on top of playing the PC version, so it's really fun to come back to the PlayStation 2 version now and then just to get a fresh experience. So if you've played Half-Life, Half-Life Source, let's not talk about that, and even the Black Mesa Fan remake, you're looking for a new way to experience Half-Life, the PlayStation 2 port might be right up your alley. I love me some Half-Life, and any excuse to play it again, talk about it again, or glaze on it again are always welcome. Though yes, I will admit it has its flaws, which I covered in my original video. Seriously, go watch it for context, hint hint! It's still an enjoyable experience, even if the PS2 version is technically inferior in many ways. It's still fun in all the ways that count, if not just for another excuse to play Half-Life again. Wow, I did not think I'd go on for this long. I promise this is the last Half-Life video I'll do for a while, unless you guys really demand I do another one. I'm gonna take a break from doing them for a little while. I have a few other games in the works right now, so stay tuned. Be sure to like and subscribe if you want to see more videos like this one. Check out my other videos as well, because I do retrospectives, mostly on retro or retro-inspired games, so if that's up your alley, you're in the right place. Leave your thoughts in the comments. Have you ever heard of this port of the game before this video, and have you ever played it? I'd love to discuss it with y'all. Also, I've been considering making a Discord server for you guys. Let me know if you'd be interested in that. This is WizPlay, and that's enough of that.